This is Northern Light for Wednesday, August 12th. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Republican Bruce Blakeman is running to oust Governor Kathy Hochul, and in his campaign, he's taking a page out of President Trump's playbook on immigration.
All they have to do is step foot in New York State, and they get free food, free transportation, free housing, and a free cell phone, while New Yorkers get stuck paying the bill.
Also on the show, some scientists in St. Lawrence County are spending the summer collecting mosquitoes to test for diseases.
It's just a little bug and they seem so innocuous, but if you look at all of the things that they've transmitted to humans, from malaria and just everything, I think we need better solutions.
And a forester in Vermont is out with a new book to empower people to be more hands-on with forest management.
All that's coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us. Support for Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio comes from Mountain Orthotic and Prosthetic Services, a full-service practice providing care for patients of all ages, with offices in Lake Placid, Plattsburgh, Malone, and Burlington. Online at mountainonp.com. And from the Northern New York Community Foundation, serving Jefferson, Lewis, and St. Lawrence counties since 1929, helping donors fulfill their charitable giving goals to forever strengthen the places they love. Online at nnycf.org. This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Republican Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman is trying to energize upstate voters as part of his campaign to oust Governor Kathy Hochul. As the New York Public News Network's Jimmy Vielkind reports, immigration is a key issue.
Hundreds of people are at a banquet hall near Great Sacandaga Lake on a perfect summer Sunday. It's a rally for Anthony Constantino, a Republican running to succeed Congressmember Elise Stefanik in this northern New York district. And the special guest is Bruce Blakeman.
Bruce, it is a real pleasure to meet you.
Any Republican hoping to win statewide office in New York needs to run up the score in deep red upstate areas like this. But Blakeman has some baggage to overcome. He edged Stefanik out of the race for governor last year, even after party leaders had endorsed her. Stefanik hasn't endorsed Blakeman, but Constantino has. So this rally is something of a kumbaya. Sue McNeil chairs the Fulton County Republican Committee. She had backed Stefanik. So you don't have any bad blood?
Oh my gosh, no. We can't. We have to unite.
McNeil says what matters most are issues, and voters in this part of the state care deeply about public safety and securing the border. That's a top concern for Angela Ryan. She emigrated from Italy and says she became a citizen in 2016 just so she could vote for President Trump.
I pray that Mr. Blakeman will address the immigration problem, because I'm an immigrant. And, you know, when I came to this country, I had gone through all the steps.
Thank you all.
When Blakeman took the stage, one of his biggest applause lines came after attacking Hochul for directing almost $4 billion of state money to help asylum seekers bust to New York during the Biden administration.
All they have to do is step foot in New York State, and they get free food, free transportation, free housing, and a free cell phone, while New Yorkers get stuck paying the bill. That ends. No more.
Hochul says helping migrants was the right thing to do.
I'm going to stand up for New Yorkers.
She's based her campaign on touting programs to put money in people's pockets, like free school lunches and one-time rebate checks. The governor also signed a new state law that restricts local governments from cooperating with federal immigration agents. Hochul says the Trump administration shouldn't be detaining immigrants who haven't committed crimes.
Communities do not want to see people warehoused in subhuman conditions and treated inhumanely. People that have been making pizza for them for 25 years or caring for their kids or their friends or running, small startup businesses. That's not how we treat people in the state of New York.
Hochul's campaign keeps tying Blakeman to Trump. Polls show the president and his immigration policies are viewed unfavorably by a majority of New York voters. Grant Reher is a political science professor at Syracuse University. He says Blakeman should focus on pocketbook issues that cut across the political spectrum because New York has so many registered Democrats.
The problem with the energy costs and other things that are often related to affordability is they're not as emotionally gripping. So I think that's what he's reaching for with those cultural things. I just don't think the arithmetic is there to hang your hat on that in New York State.
Reher pointed out that the last Republican elected to statewide office in New York was George Pataki, a moderate. He won in 2002. In Mayfield, I'm Jimmy Vielkind for the New York Public News Network.
President Donald Trump says he's looking into whether the federal government can stop New York City's new pied-à-terre tax. The city plans to tax second homes worth more than $5 million and condos and co-ops worth more than $1 million. A state judge on Staten Island has already paused the new levy, which was set to take effect next year. Trump has said on social media that the policy will drive wealthy people out of New York City. The tax is set to raise $500 million a year for New York City. Governor Hochul says she's undeterred.
Paying your fair share. Donald Trump ought to focus on all the pain he's causing New Yorkers and knock it off and don't worry about us.
City officials say they'll fight for the new tax in court. This is NCPR. You're listening to Northern Light, only here on North Country Public Radio. It's 8:08. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Stick around. NCPR book reviewer Betsy Capus talks about a new book on land ethics.
That's coming up in just a few minutes here on NCPR, which is supported by the North Country Children's Museum, Potsdam, now featuring a second floor of hands-on and minds-on exhibits and programs for children 12 and under. Open Wednesday to Sunday, northcountrychildrensmuseum.org. And from Fort de la Presentation, helping to educate and recreate historical ventures of interest to the St. Lawrence region, fort1749.org. Support also comes from you. The need for public radio is as strong today as it was when it was introduced nearly 60 years ago. When you give to NCPR, you're giving for news and music, conversation, and your connection to the North Country. Give now to support it at ncpr.org/give. And thank you so much. Music from Billy McInnes out of Brockville.
Most of the time, mosquitoes are annoying and make us itchy, but they can also cause serious illness, even death. Think malaria, dengue, and West Nile virus.
Some counties in New York track mosquitoes to see if they're carrying serious diseases. In St. Lawrence County, public health officials had no way of doing it until last year. Catherine Wheeler reports.
Chase Bond is channeling Ghostbusters. She has a jerry-rigged vacuum in one hand, connected by a thin black cord to her backpack.
We have made that joke many times.
But instead of sucking up ghosts in the city, Bond is in Brazier State Forest, crunching through layers of fallen twigs and dried pine needles. She's hunting down something even scarier to most of us: bloodthirsty mosquitoes. Bond walks around traps set up in the woods, spaced out every 10 feet. They're basically black collapsible laundry baskets and small wooden boxes. She sneaks up behind one, sticks in her vacuum, and snatches up the bugs inside.
This is a really good day. You guys are in for a treat.
After she clears each of them out, Bond swiftly screws on the lid. The mosquitoes get fresh air through the fine mesh bottom.
You can actually hear them buzzing around in there if you listen really closely.
Bond is an intern on a team of scientists in St. Lawrence County that's capturing mosquitoes. It's part of a new public health effort to understand which mosquitoes live here and what diseases they carry. In 2024, 6 horses in St. Lawrence County were infected with eastern equine encephalitis. It was the most of any county in New York State last year. All of the horses died.
This happened in a fairly concentrated time frame.
That's St. Lawrence County Public Health Director Erin Strife. She says it's normal to have a couple of cases each year, but usually they're spread out over weeks or months.
So the thought was, if it's a lot in a short amount of time, maybe there's really high viral activity in the mosquitoes, which would then potentially be transmitted to humans through mosquito bites. And we just weren't sure exactly what the risk to human health was.
Strife says they initially considered spraying insecticides over large areas to kill as many mosquitoes as possible. But that could affect all sorts of insects, and Strife says officials didn't know where to start. There wasn't a specific area where they knew for certain the infected mosquitoes were coming from.
And so we decided that we needed to take a more studied approach and determine exactly where the higher risk mosquito pools might be.
Some other counties in New York have been surveying mosquito populations for decades. St. Lawrence County hasn't had the money or staff to do it before. But thanks to funding from New York State, the county's public health department started this summer. Public health teamed up with scientists from SUNY Potsdam, Clarkson University, and SUNY ESF. The group put out traps at 3 locations in the county: Brazier State Forest, Upper and Lower Lakes Wildlife Management Area near Canton, and the Clarkson Woods in Potsdam. So far, they found 26 species of mosquitoes. Clarkson University biologist Tom Langen says it's pretty surprising.
The data looks pretty different among the 3 sites in terms of what mosquitoes are there, what are the most abundant species.
Langen says knowing where certain species live could help us identify potential hotspots when something like Triple E or West Nile pops up. Once the living mosquitoes get back to the lab, they're flash frozen. After about 20 minutes in the freezer, SUNY Potsdam student Chase Bond dumps their stiff bodies onto a white sheet of paper. Bond says she and her fellow interns sort through the thousands of mosquitoes they catch. They spent hours staring through microscopes looking for the tiny differences between species.
You're basically looking at these little microscopic hairs that are like behind a microscopic hole on a microscopic insect.
She says they've had to learn to identify species quickly because any virus that could be in the mosquitoes degrades the longer they sit at room temp. Bond moves her tweezers between the mosquitoes with precision, separating them into piles. She taps a counter to keep track. Bond is only after the female mosquitoes. Those are the ones that drink blood.
You can tell the males from the females because they have really fluffy antennae. So you can see right there, it has really fluffy antennae. So that is a male. So I'm going to put over here and count it.
Then she starts dividing them into species.
This could possibly be a culex, so I'm going to put them over there.
Once all the mosquitoes are sorted, they go back into the freezer until they're shipped to the New York State Department of Health's lab in Albany for disease testing. The team's work has already proven fruitful. Earlier this summer, a mosquito sample collected from Upper and Lower Lakes tested positive for West Nile virus. But that's the only detection of a mosquito-borne illness so far this year. SUNY Potsdam biologist Rob Snyder says this work is about establishing a baseline of what kind of mosquitoes live in St. Lawrence County. He says it will help public health determine what diseases could be here now or in the future.
We're just interested in the diversity of mosquitoes, like how many, what's the seasonality, the diversity of the mosquitoes here, and how are they going to change 10, 20 years from now.
A lot of that change could be driven by a warming climate. Warmer and wetter weather will be hospitable to more and new kinds of mosquitoes, potentially bringing new diseases. Mosquitoes are the world's deadliest animal, killing hundreds of thousands of people every year, according to the Centers for Disease Control. St. Lawrence County Public Health Director Erin Strife says surveillance helps us know what risks lie ahead.
It's just a little bug and they seem so innocuous, but if you look at all of the things that they've transmitted to humans, from malaria and just everything, I think we need better solutions.
Strife says there are things we can do now to protect ourselves from mosquito-borne illnesses. She says the Triple E vaccination for horses is effective. And while that doesn't exist for humans, Strife says people can try to avoid mosquito bites as best they can. You can wear bug spray, long sleeve shirts and pants, and stay inside during dawn and dusk when mosquitoes are most active. Catherine Wheeler, North Country Public Radio in Brazier.
This story first aired in September 2025. St. Lawrence County is continuing its mosquito surveillance program again this summer. They added a fourth site to the list to collect mosquitoes. So far, just one of the 4 pools tested positive for West Nile virus last month. NCPR's climate change and health reporting is made possible through the generous support of Margot and John Ernst.
A hospital in Plattsburgh is getting $6 million in state funding to establish an emergency mental health clinic. Champlain Valley Physicians Hospital says the new clinic will serve individuals experiencing a mental health crisis in Clinton, Essex, and Franklin counties. It will include 6 extended observation beds for adults and children. The funds are a part of the state's $21 million plan to expand mental health emergency programs across New York.
One of the oldest triathlons in the country that's based in the Adirondacks may come to an end because of declining participation and high costs. The Tupper Lake Tin Man held its 44th annual competition in June. The Adirondack Sports Council has organized the event for the past couple of years. The Adirondack Explorer reports that participation in the Tin Man has fallen over the last 2 decades. It used to draw up to 1,200 athletes compared to 400 to 500 in the past few years. The Tin Man has also struggled to sustain itself financially. Franklin County has contributed some funding, while the event has struggled to get local business sponsorships to help cover its costs. Tupper Lake town officials are hoping to find a new group to take over operations. Supervisor Rick Datola says shutting down the Tin Man could hurt the local economy and affect the Adirondacks' reputation as a sports and recreation hub. The town is expected to make a decision later this month.
A Pennsylvania man died while biking on the Adirondack Rail Trail over the weekend. State police say 64-year-old David Benfer went into cardiac arrest and collapsed while riding his bike on the rail trail about 2 miles from Old Military Road in the town of North Elba on Sunday evening. Police say Benfer had an extensive cardiac history. He was pronounced dead on the scene.
And today is a big day for astronomers and sky watchers. A partial solar eclipse will appear around midday today. Jim Bader is the director of the Strassenberg Planetarium at the Rochester Museum and Science Center.
We will see the moon cover the sun up just a little bit. That'll happen just after noon on Wednesday, so keep your eyes out with safety, of course. The sun will only be covered up about 9.28%, which is not a lot, but it's still pretty cool to see that wonderful coincidence of geometry in space.
And keep your eyes on the sky. Tonight, the Perseid meteor shower will peak in the late hours to the early dawn of tomorrow. Bader says you don't need any equipment to see the shooting stars, just clear skies and time.
Just find a safe place with a clear view of the sky. Just about anywhere. The further away you can get from lights, the better, even if it means you're just avoiding a few street lights and you're looking at it from your backyard. Anywhere you can have a nice, comfortable view of the stars, where you have more time to just look up.
According to NASA, as many as 50 to 100 meteors per hour may be visible under the ideal conditions. This is NCPR. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 20 after 8. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Stick around after the show for Bird Note. That's coming up at 8:42. Tonight, sunset in Star Lake as at 8:09, and it's a new moon in the sky. Good for that stargazing.
In the weather forecast today, some scattered showers are expected this afternoon, and you might hear a rumble of thunder or two during the afternoon and evening, both today and tomorrow. Severe thunderstorms are unlikely, but any thunderstorm can provide the risk of lightning and gusty winds, so just make sure to take care in that regard. Showers and showers are expected to continue and linger into the day on Friday, too. At last check, it was 67 degrees in Black River, 60 degrees in Saranac Lake, 71 degrees in Plattsburgh, and 18 degrees in Kingston. A new book on land ethics takes a look at some of the tough decisions that foresters have to make to revive their woods. It's called How to Love a Forest by Vermont writer Ethan Tapper. And CPR book reviewer Betsy Capus and I met up at a small library in Jefferson County to talk about it.
Well, we're in Theresa at the public library, which from the road looks like a big brick square. It's like a cube, but inside it's absolutely gorgeous. It has high ceilings and dark woodwork and a balcony area where there's the little town museum. Lots of books, but not too crowded. And there's a downstairs section with a book sale and places to do crafts. It's a beautiful space. And since we've been here, several people have come in to use it.
And we're here today to talk about a book by a forester from Vermont. It's called How to Love a Forest by Ethan Tapper. Betsy, what's Tapper's background?
So he's a forester. He grew up in Vermont, came to forestry sort of in kind of a sad way. He had been sort of roaming around as a young person, and he was helping build a barn, and there was a come-along that was bringing some huge beams together, and the rope broke, hit his head, and he lost an eye. So that was a pretty tough time in his life, but eventually he decides to go back to UVM and get a degree in forestry. And this book is talking about when in 2017 he bought a piece of land that he calls Bear Island, and this is what he says about it. 200 acres of degraded and mismanaged forest, unhealthy trees, rutted skid trails, and introduced plants. It's pretty sad-looking forest. I was thinking to myself, kind of like if you bought a super fixer-upper and maybe some people would just burn it down, but what he decides is he is going to make it a mission to try to improve his forest.
So what's his thesis? Like what's the point he's trying to get across by talking about his forest?
Well, his big thing is, he says in the beginning, what is the cost of doing nothing, right? He's in his 30s. He's going to live maybe another 50 years or more. And we all know this earth is hurting right now, but he just feels that we can't just do nothing. So for his doing something is he makes it his mission to try to improve this land that he's bought. And it's not always easy. He sometimes has to make a choice, like he's got 20 acres of this plant called Japanese barberry, and I looked it up, and it's this spiny, horrible plant that just blocks everything else. And he tries to pull it up and realizes, nope, I've got to use an herbicide. So he uses a very powerful herbicide on that. Another thing he has to do is he has acres and acres of very diseased beech trees, and he brings in loggers to cut these big patches of almost clear cuts because he just doesn't think there's any other way to improve his forest. So it was fascinating what choices he made on his land.
And Betsy, I mean, you're a landowner. What struck you about his ideas?
Yeah, I have a piece of land almost as big as his, but nowhere near as degraded. I have the same issue all of us have in the Northeast is too many deer, which means there's no reproduction coming up in the older forest, and it's very scary because that's not a good forest. I enjoyed hearing what he was doing. He also has some great parts about land use history in Vermont and the Northeast, and how even if we think we've got this big old forest, it's not. Everything has been changed by humans in the East, and so we can't just do nothing. That's his thing. We can't just do nothing, and it makes me think about a couple things I could do on my land. So, Monica, you are the same age as Ethan, in your 30s. What did you think about his ideas?
Yeah, I actually found it to be pretty empowering. I definitely have friends who feel kind of this environmental shame, I guess you could say, about, the harms that humans have done to the planet, and kind of want to, I guess, shrink themselves to protect the planet from ourselves, and from causing further harm. But, Tapper really says, no, like you're important to the flourishing of the planet. You can help forests do better by becoming, as he puts it, a keystone species. So to me, he provided, actually a really nice path forward and a vision for what could come next. Now, does he write that in the best way? No. To me, his writing isn't strong, and I even found it kind of arrogant. So maybe a book wasn't the best format, but...
Yeah, that's interesting you said that, because I forgot to mention he has a really big online presence, YouTube, Instagram, and I watched a couple of those, and there are these really nice little short things about different kinds of trees and things you can do, and I found those would be really palatable too, right? But I think this book has a place, and certainly thinking about that question of what is the cost of doing nothing, right? And he's basically saying we can't do nothing. So I'd like to end with a quote near the end of his book, and this is sort of his ideas. Once I thought that being radical meant forming views as hard, as uncompromising, as unchanging as stone. Now I believe that what is truly radical is to be as dynamic as a forest, to have the courage to adapt, to change, to constantly reimagine my relationship with this ecosystem and this glowing world. I've learned that the steps on this path toward a better world are often counterintuitive, uncomfortable, and strange. I've learned that what is simple is rarely true, and what is necessary is rarely easy.
The book is How to Love a Forest by Vermont forester Ethan Tapper. Betsy, thank you.
Thanks, Monica.
Betsy Capus is NCPR's longtime book reviewer. She lives, works, and writes in Colton. That's it for the show. Stick around for news headlines from NPR coming up next.
Then after that, it's the Marketplace Morning Report coming up at 8:51. On today's edition, why seniors are upsizing. Baby boomers account for the biggest share of home buyers in the U.S. today, so their choices can reshape the housing market. We'll dig into this a little bit more coming up in about 20 minutes right here on North Country Public Radio.
If you miss an episode of Northern Light, you can listen back to the archive at any place you can get your podcasts, and subscribe to NCPR's other podcasts too. Get a roundup of the day's news with Story of the Day, listen to personal stories told live by folks in our community on the Howl podcast, or hear features and interviews about life in the North Country with Northwards.
You can keep up with NCPR throughout the day on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook, and shoot the news team an email at news@ncpr.org. Our theme music is by Danny Thomas of Canton. Till tomorrow, I'm Monica Standreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Be well.